She gets happy.
But yeah, he's tried two different
Yes,
things.
yeah. I'd like to call to order the public hearing of the Board of Education for December 12th, 2022. Roll call, please.
Mr. Booth?
Here.
Mrs. Marks?
Here.
Mrs. Bethay? Mr. Schmidt?
Here.
Mr. Zinnerman?
Here.
Mrs. Havikhorst?
Here.
Mr. Bosch? 5 present.
Thank you. Mr. Bosch and Mrs. Bethay both had family things they needed to attend to tonight. We have an overview of the 2022 tax levy.
Yes, thank you. This is an exciting time, probably the most important night of any school calendar year, even though it doesn't garner that kind of excitement. It really is important for a school district. So I will turn this over for the final time. Final tax levy presentation
To the chief.
to the chief school business official, Dr. Gibson, who's retiring, of course. This is his final levy presentation. So, Dr. Gibson, the floor is yours.
Drum roll.
After all that, maybe I should feel more excited. I'm not that happy to go, but I am. Should I carry this with me? Sure. I'm not that happy to go, but it is time for me to retire, and I appreciate the recognition early. So we do have a tax levy to present tonight. I just wanted to point out, as you can see, we've got a new technology that we're working with today. Rather than putting it on the big screen, we've got our smart TV, and it's really interesting to use this. I may actually be at the board once or twice if I don't trip over the cord here, but I'm going to try to go ahead and have a good time tonight. This is my last time in the tax levy here, so District 53. Bittersweet. All right, so we're talking 22 property tax levy. Everybody excited, right?
We're excited, yeah.
All right, I am excited. Let me just say, I love this is what I do.
I think the crowd in the back is excited too.
But he's got jazz hands.
Property tax levy. So 2022, let's start out with the typical kind of look back at the structure behind the property tax levy. So first of all, the property tax extension limitation law detail drives how we deal with the tax levy. There's dates that we have to meet, so we've had a board meeting back in November where we did an estimated tax levy. We typically do that every year. And that was on November 14th. Then, today we're going to have the board consider the adoption of the final tax levy. And that process is required when you have a 5%, more than 5% tax levy, which is a 5% increase. And then we would file the final tax levy. It has to be filed by the 4th Tuesday of the end of the year, 4th Tuesday of December, last Tuesday of the year. That'll be December 27th. It will be filed before then. And then, as I mentioned a second ago, the increase each year, which requires you to have a tax levy hearing, which we're having right now, is whether that you're above 5% or below. So, if we were below 5% or below, we would have a public hearing, but we are above, as you see in the minutes. So therefore, we're going to have a public hearing.
I will interject one thing, just as a reminder for everyone here, but more importantly for people who may be watching at home. The levy is a fancy way of saying what we are requesting each year. The extension, which you'll hear Dr. Gibson later talk about the tax extension from 2021, that is what we actually received. So just a little bit of a difference in those two terms. The levy is what we're asking for. The extension is what we will receive, or from 21, what we did receive.
Next, let's talk a little bit about our property tax highlights. A little bit about what's to come, but we also have a little bit of a comparison as well. The CPI, Consumer Price Index, is always measured at December 31st of each year. For 2021, we use that tax levy for our 2022 tax levy. We use that CPI for our 2022 tax levy. So it was 7% last year. And everybody knows, especially with the prices that we pay for goods and services, that there was an increase in prices based on the Consumer Price Index. Or rather, that Consumer Price Index was driven by those higher prices. But in terms of property taxation, we're limited to 5% increase on the Consumer Price Index. So what money was extended last year, 2021, we can get no more than 5% from the Consumer Price Index increase. even though it was 7%. And in terms of how that affects our levy, it's an increase of $784,000 over the prior year, which is more than we typically get, because typically it's been less than 3% of an increase from year to year in the CPI. The total increase you'll see in our tax levy is going to be almost $4 million, $3.9 million, which is a 25.5% increase. It's over 5%. But that includes the referendum. We all participated in that, and I think we all had fun doing that, seeing the community, talking with folks. That's not what I'm here to talk about tonight, but I do want to point that out, because I always enjoy that. The third time I've done it here, and it's always been a blast working with one of my colleagues, one of my colleagues, canvassing the neighborhoods. Also includes consumer price index, as I mentioned, 5%, and any new property. We have to estimate new property each year, because that's not on our tax rolls. Once it comes on the tax rolls, you've got to capture it. Otherwise, you don't have access to that property increase for the duration of our lifetimes and beyond. I wanted to give you a bit of, and Shelley Beck and I was kind of talking about this once in a while, understanding how the tax rate is affected by property values. Typically, for a homeowner, the value of your property affects how much you pay in taxes, because it's measured against the tax rate. For our setting the tax levy, the way school districts and other taxing bodies do it, the tax rate is driven by the property values, not the amount of money that you get. So you can see, as I've said before, there's an inverse relationship between the blue line, which I think is tax rate, which is tax rate, and the orange line, which is the property values. Just as you can see, the orange line goes down, the blue line goes up, and vice versa. And now the last line, it kind of looks like a bird, so if you can see where the bird's beak is, that's 2021. So we expected when we did this last year that is what, this is a slide from last year. I just simply put it back in this one, and that's what we expected it to be. That was going to be right at that point, which is I think 4.41 rate. I think that was about $360,000 in EAV. So now this year, what happened to the bird's beak? So what we're estimating on our property tax levy, because of the referendum, our tax rate is no longer dependent upon the property value. We've set the tax rate. The taxpayers agreed that we would set the tax rate at 5.61. That's what that blue line represents. So because that relationship no longer exists in terms of the inverse relationship between tax rate and property values. So next year, we'll see that come back the way it was. We'll see that inverse relationship. But for this year, I just want to point out the effect of how the tax rate is set in this case for us. And so eventually property values will drive the amount that we get, which is similar to what I said happens with taxpayers. But it's just interesting to see that happen, because we never really had to do it that way. So just showing you how those that inverse relationship works and how it works differently with the property, with the tax referendum. All right, now let's go into the numbers a little bit. Let's talk about the 2021 tax levy extension that Dr. McAllister mentioned. The caps funds, which are really all the funds except for the bond issues, was 15.67 million. So that's the tax capped numbers that are controlled by the tax cap.
And again, just as a reminder, this is the money we did receive last year. So on all funds but bond and interest, it was 15.6.
2021 tax levy. Our bond and interest levy was 2.9 million, 2.98, which is actually set by the bonds that are already outstanding. So the Cook County Clerk actually sets that number for us. And these was actually extended. So the total levy that was extended was 18.65 million. Try to keep that number in mind if you can. 18.65 million levy extended in 2021. I do want to toss in something that the second half of that money from 2021 we typically receive in July, August, and because of shenanigans at the county level between the assessor and the board of review, we didn't get any of that money started. Actually, we still haven't received a dime of it, but they did start to, they did close out, I guess whatever they had to close out, and we'll be getting money later this month and then into January. So it was, several months later than usual. Just as a reminder, we had to wait on that.
All of you just got your tax bills in the mail within the past month. Yeah, those were delayed several months.
And then we expect that the payments will become some in December and then mostly in January. So that's our 2021 tax levy. I should slow down. This is going too fast and I am going to miss it.
That's okay, John. Yeah, it's okay, really.
We'll show you the recording.
All right, so for our 2022 tax levy, again, which has reference funds in it, our capped funds levy is now at 19.61 million. So it's up just a little bit, right? That's that 25.15% increase that we talked about earlier. That was an increase over the 2021 levy, and it does, as I said, includes the referendum dollars. Let's look at that just a little bit in brief. Referendum funds were just over $3 million. Our $3.94 million increase was $3,940,000. That 5% CPI increase plus the new property is giving us about an estimate of about $878,000 in tax revenue. Loss and cost, which is a percentage that's added on by the Cook County Clerk's Office to cover uncollected titular taxes. That would add on to that revenue as well. Brings it between 3 and 5% of the tax expended. And then the allocation that we do, we connect this property tax levy to our budget. It has to be. Matter of fact, you have to pass a budget in order to be able to do a tax levy. So they have a symbiotic relationship. And we also have to be cognizant of the board's guidelines for our fund balances. So the board requires us to have these 25% of expenditures in our funds, and we always look at that to make sure that we're within the board guidelines. Bond and interest levy, again, like last year, set by the Cook County Clerk's Office, 3.22 million, which is an 8.12% increase. We increase it by CPI just like everything else, but again, it's really governed by what bonds are outstanding and also loss and cost, factor that to the loss and cost percentage. And so, if you remember the last number that we had there, our total levy requested now is 22.43% increase in total levy. So we're going to be at 22.84 million of increase. Of the tax levy, which includes our referendum. So that's what we're looking at for operating in next calendar year, 2023, which will be half of 2023 fiscal year, and then into 2024. So that is really the presentation that I have for you tonight. And if there's any questions, I'll entertain those. Thanks for listening.
I do have a question. You mentioned that you have to estimate new property that's coming on, and there's clearly a big building going up in downtown Homewood, but we won't see any of that because it's in a TIF district, even though it's being funded and supported by the community, correct?
Correct.
But you still have to estimate what its value will be, even though we won't see any of it, is that correct?
Well, what we do with anything that's involved in anything is in the TIF, we have to know when the TIF is going to come off the rolls. So the new property that we estimate is typically going to be, we do keep track of, there's a couple of TIFs that are coming off, and so we try to make sure I did talk with the village, they believe that it's going to be coming off next year, but I still put in a $2 million of estimate to make sure that we're going to capture it just in case they're wrong.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll capture the TIF when they come off. So this new one that's downtown, we'll be a few years before I estimate that one, because that's, what is it, probably his third year, fourth year, I think, maybe fifth year. So that will be another 20 years.
Right. Okay, thank you.
And just so everyone is aware, we have 7 different TIF districts in our school area. So that's 7 areas of economic development. So you see new construction happening, and people obviously think the school district's going to benefit from that construction. However, oftentimes those businesses have been lured here because of tax incentives through increment financing. So as Dr. Gibson pointed out, one of those is expected to come off the rolls next year, and so we will finally be able to capture some of that
Which
revenue.
one is that?
South, it's not South Gate, it's
Southwest.
Southwest Corridor. Yeah.
Southwest.
Yeah, and then South Gate is a year or two after that. There's two within the next, let's say, 4 years that are coming off.
Yeah, and we can send you that report. So Dr. Council and I talked about it. We can kind of give you an update of that. We didn't really cover that with finance, but we can certainly update you on that so you're aware.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to adjourn the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And now let's just take a minute to get to our next agenda.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Education for Homewood School District 153 for December 12th, 2022. Roll call, please.
Mr. Booth.
Here.
Mrs. Marks.
Here.
Mrs. Bethay. Mr. Schmidt.
Here.
Mr. Zinnerman.
Here.
Mrs. Havikhorst.
Here.
Mr. Bosch. 5 present.
And Alex and Ashanti were both unable to come tonight. They both had family issues that they have to be home for. We have approval of the minutes from the regular board meeting of November 14th, 2022. Are there any additions or corrections to that set of minutes? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have future dates.
Yes, 2 more weeks until our winter vacation. So on Thursday, December 22nd, that is an early release day for students, and in the afternoon, staff will be working with the Homewood Police Department, going over our crisis preparation drills, which we do each summer, but also revisiting that again. And then Friday the 23rd, the next day, is a Staff Institute day. So the last day students are actually here is halfway through the day on Thursday, December 22nd, and then staff will have a day and a half of Institute trainings, headed into winter break. And then our winter vacation will be a full 2 weeks, December 22nd to January 6th, and students will return on Monday, January 29th. I'd also like to point out that we are offering, did I say January 29th? You did. January 9th.
Generous winter break.
Ms. Peck, I saw your look, and she's like, this isn't college. We don't take off till January 29th. January 9th. We're also offering on January 4th shield testing, which we did, if you recall, about a year ago. We opened up the buildings over winter vacation for shield testing, and we had over 600 students that took part in that testing. Of course, we also realized when we came back from winter break last year, we actually had to close in-person instruction for 3 days because COVID numbers were so high and we literally ran out of staff. Certainly hope that that doesn't repeat itself. But nonetheless, we want to provide an opportunity for people to get tested. So on January 4th, which is Wednesday of the week before students return, we will make that testing available again here in the James Hart Wood Floor Gym. It is only available for students and staff. Because we have to be registered through SHIELD. And so, but we encourage our families and our staff members, if they are here and would like to get tested on January 4th, to please do so. And that information has been sent home in newsletters and we'll continue to publicize. But we do look forward to seeing everybody back on Monday, January 9th, and wish everybody a happy holidays.
Great. Thank you. We have audience we have, do we have any presentations tonight?
We do not.
Audience participation, is there anyone in the audience who has come to address the board on any item that is not on tonight's agenda? Okay. Okay. Okay, come on up.
Yeah.
Please introduce
yeah,
yourself.
speak into the microphone so we can hear.
I'm a mom of 5 in the school district, one's in college now. I have a question about, everyone knows Homewood is the schools. This is why people come to Homewood is for schools. And I'm seeing a lot of that TIF thing. And as a community member, as a parent, kind of a little griped about it because our schools are libraries. They're what makes Homewood. You know, is there a way for someone like a parent, myself, community members, have you guys tried reaching out to the village to see what relationship can be done when he's bringing in, the mayor's bringing in these businesses? It's not considering the school. And everyone knows we moved to Homewood for the schools. You know, is there a way that we can get a relationship with the village to make sure the school's funded as well?
We've worked very hard to do that, and we've had multiple conversations over decades. And we are where we are, but the TIFs are completely controlled by the village. So your concerns, while we share them, we definitely share them, would be best spoken about with the village officials, either at a village board meeting or individually with village trustees or the village president. But we have absolutely no control other than the relationship that we try to build with the trustees and the village president. And I truly appreciate your bringing it up. Yeah.
The schools welcoming Homewood, and everyone's looking behind me. I look at the schools, I didn't look at the community kind of thing. I looked at the schools really offer. And we see all these checks going out, but our schools are not benefiting from it. Doesn't help the community, doesn't help the schools.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else? Okay. Any board members have any reports on any committees or other meetings that you've attended?
We had our F&P meeting that was referenced earlier by the retiring finance individual, Dr. Gibson. And there'll be more information to be shared, but that was the gist of it. And just want to say that I echo the sentiment in regards to you. It was just to see it finally up there, looked like a bird. Yes, it did. But to see the change is phenomenal. I just want to put it out there. It's imperative for us to ensure that we've been trusted with this, is that we do what we need to do to ensure that the transition to our new person coming in, all that, that we're good stewards, and I know we will be. But it was a very exciting F&P meeting, one of the best that we've been in.
Shelley, I've got two. November 29th, Personnel Committee met, and we discussed also, John, you're on a lot of people's agendas lately. It's a good thing. Are you feeling the love? You should be. We discussed the searching process, the search process that Dr. McAllister will start going through in order to fill that position. We might have more details today, but I know it's coming soon. We did a quick overview of historical and present administrative contracts, and had some discussion about some future, what things could look like, and in the context of our third topic, staffing levels, in terms of just being aware of where we are at right now and what our needs would be in the future as well. So that was Personnel Committee. On behalf of Ashanti, who heads our Ed Progress Committee, we met last week on December 7th. 4 topics of discussion on the agenda: renewing our strategic plan for the range of 2023 to 28. Can't believe we're at the end of our previous 5 years. but going into the next 5. We discussed, had a very good, exciting conversation about our early childhood and pre-K programming. And as that develops, we'll be sharing more information. We looked at the English Language Arts pilot curriculum that they're currently working on. And then Dr. McAllister began to share with us the fiscal year 24 school year calendar.
Great.
So,
Thank you.
thanks.
Anyone else? All right. We have the superintendent's report.
Yeah, thank you. One thing that I wanted to follow up on, Ed Progress, going back to first semester along with Ms. Dunn, have been reviewing our board policy manual in its entirety. And we've done a complete review of all what currently are 8 binders that sit in my office, with the goal of getting those completely updated with current policies as recommended by press, which is the IASB attorneys. And then that will be ready for adoption. I just got an email this week saying that will be ready for adoption next month. So at our January meeting, we will present that updated manual, and then moving forward, it will be made available online so that people who want to see the manual, whether it's an employee, community member, they don't need to come to the district office, they can go to the website, and it will be much more convenient. So we're excited about that. And I appreciate all the work of Ed Progress. It was very time consuming to look at all that. And again, Ms. Dunn for her help as well. I also wanted to mention a question I get frequently, especially in light of the recent referendum conversation, is families that have said, we are happy to pay more taxes to support our schools. But what are you doing about people who don't live here? And so whenever I get that question, I assure people that we take residency verification very seriously. As a matter of fact, we added another layer of verification this year by requiring all 6th graders, regardless of whether they've been in our district since kindergarten, requiring all 6th grade families to re-verify residency, which is the first time we've done that in several years. But we do employ a residency investigator, and I just wanted to give you an update on the work that Mr. Lux, our investigator, has done going back to this summer, because when we start the registration process in April, that's when it begins in earnest, and it gets very busy, as you might imagine, in the summer months. So the work that he's done, 13 students who tried to apply were not allowed to apply because they did not have proper residency. So that's 13 kids that were not able to enroll because of a lack of residency. There were an additional 13 students who have been disenrolled as a result of his work. So they started the school year only to be discovered that they did not have proper documentation. Only one of those, and in addition, there was one family that we had a hearing for, which is still in appeal. So most of the time when Mr. Lux approaches a family and says, here's the information we have, because we are required to disclose in advance of any hearing, here's the evidence that the district has. Most of the time families will enroll in the district where they reside. So 13 never enrolled, an additional 13 were disenrolled, with one that went to hearing. There were 34 additional students investigated that were found to be bona fide residents. So we get information from a variety of sources. Oftentimes in the registration process itself, the paperwork that we receive raises questions. So Mr. Lux investigated an additional 34 who were found to be residents, and we currently have 15 who are under investigation, active cases that he is working. So I want to assure the public that we take that very seriously. And if we are going to ask people to pay good property taxes to support our schools, we want to ensure that every student who attends here is a bona fide resident of the district. So I just want to assure all of you and assure our public that is something we take seriously, and we are working each and every day to make sure that is in fact verified. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any questions? All righty. We have an executive session to discuss student discipline and the superintendent's evaluation. Is there supposed to be something else on there?
Consent agenda.
The consent
We have the consent agenda first.
Sorry, we have the consent agenda. We need to authorize the chief school business official to pay the usual and customary bills for January 2023. Whoa. Is there a motion?
We also have
Oh
personnel.
my gosh, you guys, I'm so sorry. We have a personnel report.
Personnel report, again, we have several people who are going on leave for a variety of reasons. We also are excited to add a position at Willow School, which you can see in your agenda, as well as, this is exciting news, I've never seen kids be so excited over French fries. This week, we returned hot lunches for the first time in a long time. Part of that was COVID. That's when it originally shut down our hot lunch program. However, we were having problems actually replacing ovens that were no longer functioning. We were able to get that done. And so 2 days a week we've had hot lunches, and I'm not exaggerating when I say kids were very excited to have French fries and chicken nuggets and Bosco sticks this week. So part of that, though, is we need an additional dishwasher because of the trays now. So that's what the position that you see there at Churchill.
Thank you. Now, are there any questions on anything on the consent agenda? Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented in items 7A and 7B.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Zinnerman?
Yes.
Mrs. Havikhorst?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Mrs. Marks?
Yes.
All ayes.
Motion carries. We do need an executive session to discuss student discipline and the superintendent's evaluation. Is there a motion?
To move.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mr. Zinnerman?
Yes.
Mrs. Havikhorst?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Mrs. Marks?
Yes. Motion carries. We will return to conduct more business.
I'm sorry. No, you don't need them. No, you do not need your computers. Mr. Amadio, if you would like to join us. That's entirely up to you. You want to do it in a public setting?
No, we don't do that. No,
We don't
We
do
don't
that.
do that.
Okay.
We don't do that in open session, but you're welcome to join us in a meeting.
Yeah. And then, Miss Mandy Souza, would you be able to join us as well?
Okay, we are back in open session. We have several action agenda items tonight. The first is the second payment of November 2022 bills and the first payment of December 2022 bills. Are there any questions on the bills? Is there a motion to approve?
Moved upon the recommendation of the chief school business official that the Board of Education authorize the second payment of November 2022 bills and the first payment of December 2022 bills in amount not to exceed $3,297,372.75.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Zinnerman?
Yes.
Mrs. Havikhorst?
Yes.
Mr. Booth?
Yes.
Mrs. Bethay?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Mrs. Marks?
Yes.
All ayes.
Motion carries. We have the adoption of the certificate of tax levy. We heard about this in our special meeting prior to this meeting. Are there any questions?
A copy of that presentation, it was excellent.
It is in your first
Actual
meeting.
video that we recorded.
Yes, we did. Is there a motion?
Moved upon the recommendation of the Finance and Property Committee and the Superintendent that the Board of Education approve the 2022 Certificate of Tax Levy for real estate taxes to be paid in 2022 as attached. Also, moved upon the recommendation of the Finance and Property Committee and the Superintendent that the Board of Education adopt the resolution allocating 2022 tax levy to individual funds of the school district property tax limitation law as amended, as attached. And moved upon the recommendation of the Finance and Property Committee and the Superintendent that the Board of Education adopt the resolution to levy 2022 taxes for certain purposes as attached.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Havikhorst,
Yes.
Mr. Booth,
Yes.
Mrs. Bethay,
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt,
Yes.
Mr. Zinnerman,
Yes.
Mrs. Marks,
Yes.
all ayes.
Motion carries. We have action regarding student discipline for student 23903.
Yes, this is the individual that we discussed during closed session. The recommended actions, plural, are in your packet.
Is there a motion?
Suggested possible motions regarding student discipline. The Board of Education affirms the out-of-school suspension of the student identified in today's closed session. The board finds the student eligible for expulsion for a period beginning immediately and ending the last day of 2023-24 school year. The board authorizes the assignment of the student by the superintendent to an appropriate alternative placement. The superintendent and the board council will prepare and deliver notice and findings of the board consistent with the hearing officer's report and the discussion of the board in closed session.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Booth,
Yes.
Mrs. Bethay,
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt,
Yes.
Mr. Zinnerman,
Yes.
Mrs. Havikhorst,
Yes.
Mrs. Marks,
Yes. Motion carries. We need to accept the proposal with RJM Consulting Services for the 5-year strategic long-range plan.
Yes, so in 2018, Dr. Madonia contracted with the school district, and he facilitated our strategic plan. And as Mr. Schmidt alluded earlier, believe it or not, we're at the end of that 5-year cycle. So in January, I plan to update you as to the status of our existing strategic plan, but then we will also begin with the adoption of this contract, the planning for the next phase, which will take place in the spring. And that always starts, of course, with a meeting between the board and Dr. Madonia, just to kind of get an idea of what we envision for the strategic plan. But then if you recall, that includes a group of 50 to 60 community members, staff members, et cetera. So we look forward to setting our path in light of especially the referendum and how that might be able to impact our new strategic plan.
When will you be able to get possible dates to us for when the board will be meeting with him?
I will reach out to him. I told him that this was going to be approved this evening, so I will reach out to him
Okay.
tomorrow, and we will
And then maybe
pin
can-
that down.
Great.
Yep,
Okay, good deal. Thank you.
absolutely.
Is there a motion?
Moved upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the board accept the proposal with RJM Consulting Services for a 5-year strategic long-range plan in the amount of $12,000.
Second?
Roll call, please.
Mr. Schmidt,
Yes.
Mr. Zinnerman,
Yes.
Mrs. Havikhorst,
Yes.
Mr. Booth,
Yes.
Mrs. Bethay,
Yes.
Mrs. Marks,
Yes. Motion carries. We have employment.
Yes, one of the things that we have discovered are behaviors for a variety of reasons, but the need to have people with specialized skills in the realm of behavior, and we have the opportunity to employ a registered behavior technician, more commonly referred to as an RBT, to work with our students who are expressing some pretty high needs. So we're excited to bring Kayla McLaurin forth to you for employment.
Any questions? Is there a motion?
Moved upon the recommendation of the administration that the Board of Education approve the employment of Kayla McLaurin effective December 19, 2022, upon the terms recommended by the superintendent, conditioned only upon receipt of a satisfactory criminal background report and upon receipt no later than December 23, 2022, evidence of proper legal qualifications for the position to be filled.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Havikhorst,
Yes.
Mr. Booth,
Yes.
Mrs. Bethay,
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt,
Yes.
Mr. Zinnerman,
Yes.
Mrs. Marks,
Yes. Motion carries. Are there any discussion items tonight? Any written communication to the board? No, ma'am. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Move.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. See you guys next year.
Next year. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.